learn? I was thinking about what you might talk about as you were writing.
What do you mean by that?
Well, did you think that you might be asked to talk about what you've written as you were writing, or you concentrated just on the activity
I
itself?
was trying to balance it between, was it learn for me or what I would do if I was the teacher? And I wanted people to learn, so I made a conscious decision to go to learn for me.
Good. Chris, what were you thinking of as you were doing that?
I think I did the opposite, and I kind of split the thing into learn as if I was the teacher, but also then learn as if it was me as well.
Right.
So I've kind of gone from two different tangents.
I swithered between learning for myself, but as part of learning for myself, learning together with people, so it was a more collaborative kind of approach.
Alright, so if you look at the words that you've got there now, which ones are associated with you as a learner? Which ones did you put down that, because you've all put something and thought about yourself in that context? And language?
And in relation to, I guess, trying to learn forms of language from the country, purely on that simple basis. So into translations and actually be able to speak, be it Italian, be it Spanish, whatever.
Right.
I put, because it's that old thing of, if I have an aptitude for learning this, I like it. If I do not have an aptitude, I like it not so much. So I think, yeah, that was my first thought, was aptitude to learn, for engagement with.
For engagement with.
I put down engagement. So I took it that next step in terms of if you are engaged with something, then you are more likely to learn and to interact with what's actually going on.
And I certainly agree with that. And we come to know that in our practice, that if our learners look highly engaged and that they might get something out of this, then we know that they're more likely to author themselves into the experience. So what I've tried to do there is started with a research strategy that we like to use in our group of researchers, because we're actually interested in people's stories and finding out about how it is for them, either in their school, as a learner in that school, how people relate to the policies and how they align to the mission statements. So if you want to find out those things from someone, if you have a key focus as a researcher, and if you've had a place in school, then you understand how school settings work. And they're like most institutions. That is, they have the what is called the cover story. That is the story that goes out to parents and goes out to the newsletter and is on the board at the front of the school. That cover story. Then there are the sacred stories, and that's the stories that teachers say about the way they do things in school. And there is another set of stories, and they are the secret stories that may sometimes only end up as pillow talk with someone else about other aspects. So we understand that the life of a person in any situation is quite complex. And if we go in as a researcher, we don't want the cover stories. We could have taken those from the newsletters. We could have taken that from an interview with a principal in 10 minutes. We're actually always more interested in the complexity of what enables or disables people to function at their optimum, to get the most out of the experience. And because we're thinking about schools, we're always thinking about learning and optimising learning, either as the experience is presented or as it is received. So if we're going to start interviewing anybody about anything, we want to have the most subtle entry point possible to least disrupt the water. So they will have always had a letter that says, you know, I am researching your school's adoption of new technologies, let's just say, as a general focus. So we'll be interviewing a range of teachers in different areas to see how this is, you know, how you've done it. Your school's very successful, and we want to know so we can spread the good news, and you know, everybody else doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. So they know that it's about new technologies. They've already been given the cover story of, you know, you do it really well, and we'd like to know how it was done. But if we really want to understand it in the nitty-gritty way, we use what the strategy we've just used with you, which is a UK invention, which we've adopted, and it's just to put a word there, so it could be in the scenario we just talked about, new technologies. Put it on the page. That's the only 2 words you've given them. Everything else that's said is their choice. It's their voice, and you haven't guided it. So they put that key word or focus on the page, and everything can tumble out. And like I did with you, I just say, I might just repeat what you said, a language, and you unfold it more. So I get your initial response, but then you tell me the story behind that initial response. And when I go away with your page and I look at it, and I look at the tentative questions I thought I might ask, I go, I don't need to ask that, you answered it, or that's something I would never even thought to ask you, but that's really interesting and I wouldn't have known about that, I have to follow it up. So what that initial foray does is show the person that you're there to listen, to start a conversation, and who has the story? They have the story, they're the only person that can tell you what it was like.
And it's a very powerful tool in terms of, sort of participatory action research.
Because people can see the landscape and what's involved and the variations on the thing.
Yeah, and I think then the dialogue that ensues between people's different stories, that people have different perspectives on the same thing, can be really helpful in terms of identifying what some of the issues are and what some of the potential solutions are.
I think to think through how you described it, it seems to make more sense because of that contextual basis. So.
And because it starts with their language,
yeah.
It starts with their words, it starts with their choice of what they wish to share.
And that's interesting.